So you have the benefit of being able to stack that lumber up and out of the way, but you can also adjust the height of those racks to whatever you want. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Patriot DIY channel. If you do much woodworking at all, you might run into a common problem, and that's what to do with all that extra scrap wood that you have laying around. If you're like me, you like to save cut-offs and you like to have a little extra lumber laying around for your next project that might be coming up. And if you're just stacking that on the floor around your shop in different areas, it can really get in the way. So one of the best ways to fix that is to have a wall-mounted lumber rack. Now, there are a lot of products on the market that you can buy to mount to your wall to stack lumber on. And there's also a lot of different ways that you can build your own. And being a DIYer, I wanted to build my own. So I did a lot of looking around, and one of the best solutions that I found is to build this DIY adjustable lumber rack. So you have the benefit of being able to stack that lumber up and out of the way, but you can also adjust the height of those racks to whatever you want. Now, I am going to show you exactly how we built this adjustable lumber rack, but before we do that, if you haven't done it yet, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that. I'm also going to include in the description below a link to the digital plans so you can have a step-by-step guide on how to build this for yourself. Now, let's get over to the workbench and I'll show you how to build a DIY adjustable lumber rack. Alright guys, first thing we're going to do is cut down some 2x4s into 5-inch blocks. And you can see I am using a scrap piece of 2x4 to make a stop block so that each piece will be the exact same size. Next thing we're going to do is take this over to the drill press, and we're going to pre-drill some mounting holes into the center of each block. Then we're going to switch over to the Forstner bit, and we're going to drill out a 1/2 inch deep recess for the head of the bolts that we're going to be using to mount this to the wall. Then we're going to measure and cut some 1/2 inch plywood. First, I'm going to use my track saw to get a rough cut, and then we're going to take it over to this table saw to cut it down to size. You can see I'm using a 2x4 to get the correct spacing for my fence on the table saw, and then we're going to cut out those strips. There you go. You can see I have my little helper with me on the bench today, and first thing we're going to do is go ahead and lay out our blocks, and we're going to be using scrap 2x4s as spacers to create the gaps that we're going to use to put in the arms of our lumber rack later. Once we have everything laid out, we're going to put a thin layer of wood glue on the top of each of those 5-inch blocks. Then we're going to lay our plywood strip on top, and we're going to screw that down on opposite corners of each block. Once we're done with that, we can flip it over and we'll go ahead and test fit some 2x4s into our gaps and sand down any that need some adjustment. Then we go back with the wood glue on that side and repeat the process, putting our other plywood strip on top and screwing it down, being careful to make sure we put those screws on the opposite corners from the other side. And then we're just going to repeat that process for however many lumber racks you need to build. Once we have that done, we're going to take them over to the miter saw just to clean up the ends of each of those, and then over to the table saw to do the same thing on the long sides. We're just taking off a small amount of wood here to clean up those edges. This is really not necessary, but it does give it a nice finished look. Once everything's trimmed up, we're just going to hit it with our orbital sander to get everything nice and smooth, and then we'll be ready to mount it to the wall. Now you can see we're using a 2x4 spacer to get the spacing from the floor on this. This is a good idea to make sure that you get each of those racks at the same height on your wall. And then to mount this, we're going to be using 5.5-inch self-tapping screws into each of the recessed holes that we created earlier. This should give it a nice strong connection to your wall, and it should be able to hold plenty of weight. We've pre-cut some 2x4 scraps into 18-inch long pieces to make the arms of our lumber rack. And before we put them in place on the wall, we're just going to take them over to the sander, and we're just going to take a little bit of material off of the edges to make sure it slides into our slots nice and easy. Now you still want it to be a pretty tight fit, so don't take off too much wood here. Then we're just going to insert those into the slots. Now you can put these in any position that you want. And now we're ready to load that bad boy up. All right guys, that's it for how to build your own DIY adjustable lumber rack. I hope this video helped you out, guys. If you have any questions or anything, make sure you leave those down in the comments below. And don't forget, we are going to have a link in the description for all the tools we use for this build, as well as digital plans that you can download and give you a step-by-step guide on how to build these for yourself. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.